Bishops versus knights. Tests. You studied knights, you studied bishops, and you studied the battle between the two. Now it's time to put your knowledge to the test and see if you can use all that information in a practical manner. The following tests are designed to give you insight into how much you've learned and to serve as extra instruction. If you have trouble solving the tests, don't worry. That means we've uncovered something you don't understand, and this allows you to fix things by rereading the previous material or by picking up the bits of knowledge you're missing in the answers that start on page 455. Part 2, Test 17, Diagram 95, Level 1900 to 2200. White to move. Pause it here. N. McDonald versus P. Lucas. Budapest 1995. White to move. Black has doubled F pawns. This isn't the end of the world, but it does make his position rather inflexible. White's pawn on d4 gives him a central and queenside space advantage. In fact, the half-open c-file, the c4 knight, control over c5, and White's light-squared bishop will make it clear that this is the area where White should try and make some inroads. Other than pawn structure consideration, the main imbalance is Black's two bishops versus White's bishop and knight. However, the structure plays a role here too, since the pawns are severely limiting the bishop's activity. So, the two main bits of information White needs to concentrate on is seek queenside play. An eventual minority attack with b2, b4, b5 is in the air. Optimize your knights. Optimizing the knights means bringing one or both of them to an advanced post, where they can influence the upcoming queenside battle. Remember that your whole army has to work for the same goal. Thus, the c5 square suggests itself. Once there, it will hit b7, and if chased away by b7, b6, the c6 pawn, which will be sitting on an open file, will be quite weak. Because the pawn structure favors White, and because the knights are better suited to this structure, White will retain a small but annoying edge for some time to come. Explaining the rating spread. This is far from easy because White not only has to be able to get his knight to c5, but he also has to be aware of the minority attack. On top of that is the question about bishop takes e5 after White's knight e5. In my view, that's too much to take into account for anyone below 1900, but I would love it if lots of readers proved me wrong. Knight e5, exclaim. Heading for d3, and then to c5. Trying to get the e2 knight to c5 isn't as effective. Knight f4. Bishop d5 offers equal chances. While knight c1 is also fine for black. Note that knight e5, in comparison to knight c1, takes the knight off the threatened c4 square. This means that knight c1 allows bishop d5. Because the f5 pawn can't be taken, the white queen needs to remain on c2 to defend the c4 knight. But knight e5, bishop d5 isn't playable since queen takes f5 picks up a free pawn. Of course, keeping the knight on e2 has the added benefit that a well-timed knight f4 is still on the table. Knight to d5. Other choices. Bishop takes e5. D takes e5 leads to some surprisingly complex positions that give white a bothersome initiative. Example, knight d7. Knight to d5 is possible, but it doesn't put any pressure on e5 and thus gives white a free hand. Black's queen isn't well placed after queen c7, f4. Is a little better for white since knight takes e5. e4 is annoying. F takes e4, double question mark. So instead bishop takes e5, we're also going to look at knight to d7, but knight to d3, and knight takes d7, queen takes, knight to d3 both leave white with all the play, thanks to the factors mentioned earlier. Note that 14 knight takes c6 is an interesting but dubious decision due to rook c8 exclame. Knight to b8, bishop b7. Also gives black a small edge. So instead of knight b8, bishop e5. When black's extra piece has to be more important than white's 3 pawns. Also, instead of bishop takes e5 or knight to d7, knight e to f4 is also good. And as usual, white's for choice. So in the game, knight to d5 is played. With his thematic minority attack in motion, white soon took over the queenside and scored an instructive win. I suspect time trouble was at work here. Simply bishop h3. Rook takes f7 was decisive. On 0.